Now it's time to hear from a longtime civil rights attorney, Laura Shower Ives, about how the larger legal battle could shake out. Laura's perspective on where things stand today is a mix of hope, concern, and caution. She sat down with correspondent Gwyneth Dolan to talk it through.
Laura Shower Ives, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are very glad to have your insight on some of this complicated legal wrangling happening right now around abortion. When the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the majority said this should be an issue decided by the states. But what does that actually mean? Like, what are the mechanisms, what are the legal pathways that states can decide about abortion?
They can do that legislatively. They can do that via ballot measure. They can do that via constitutional amendment. And then the issue can also be decided by the state Supreme Court. Though the United States Supreme Court said that this would be an issue left to the states, that's not clear.
Yeah, and all roads lead to Rome, and Rome being the U.S. Supreme Court. So
Exactly.
it's in the states, but it's eventually going to get back there. Do the pro-abortion rights groups or anti-abortion rights groups, which of them wants to get to Rome fastest?
Absolutely, the anti-abortion rights groups, the anti-choice groups, want to get there as soon as possible. And what we're seeing right now is a very concerted effort in New Mexico by out-of-state extremists to kind of scattershot, throw out whatever they can, and this is happening nationally as well, to get this back to the Supreme Court, get it in the federal courts, who they view as more sympathetic to their cause. And so there are really a variety of paths there, actually. That could be through federal acts that, a new Congress could enact. It could be old laws that they're pointing to. It could be a reimagining of our due process clause. There are a variety of things that can happen going forward.
Our laws around reproductive care and gender-affirming care now are very liberal, especially compared to some of our neighbors like Texas, which are some of the most conservative. But then you have these border communities, Hobbs, these places right on the border with Texas that are conservative communities. And they are not in charge in Santa Fe anymore, as they have been in previous decades. And they feel, a lot of people in those communities feel that that New Mexico's laws don't represent where they are on this. So why should they not be able to pass laws that apply in those counties where conservatives are the majority of people who live there?
Well, for a variety of reasons. One, healthcare should not be patchwork throughout the state. That's chaotic. There's a reason to have sort of uniform regulations and laws that govern the provision of healthcare. In addition to that, that's sort of always the constitutional question. Can you determine somebody's freedom, somebody's choices by merely whether a group of people or not raises their hands? In abortion, that's a particularly difficult thing to do. Abortion should be absolutely no different than any other healthcare. There are all sorts of decisions that people make that are consequential, significant. They rely on their doctor's advice, their own family's counsel, their own religion, their own beliefs. And reproductive care should be absolutely no different than that. And when you're talking about restrictions later in a pregnancy, that really just doesn't happen unless something catastrophic is happening. And we're seeing now in these states that you're describing as more conservative, where, what advocates have been saying for a good while, which is like women are going to be in peril as a result of this. Like pregnancies can actually put us at risk, put our lives at risk, and that's happening. And so that should be a woman and her doctor making that decision.
So what we're seeing now is this strategy, and you mentioned a national strategy to pass ordinances at the local level, which we've seen in several places here in New Mexico. And it's a national strategy to do what? To provoke a court case?
Ultimately, the aim is to get this question to the U.S. Supreme Court, who they view as sympathetic, and for a national ban on abortion. That is undoubtedly what the aim is.
So New Mexico has a Democrat as Attorney General who has been active on this issue. In terms of the strategy for pro-abortion rights group, is this a good thing that the Attorney General is getting involved?
For people who are pro-choice, it's a very difficult landscape to navigate right now. And so I think having the New Mexico Supreme Court, if they ultimately do, say that there's a constitutional right to New Mexico to abortion or reproductive health care in New Mexico, that is a good thing. Where it becomes difficult is it's not fail-safe.
Ultimately, the future depends on a number of things, including elections. We're seeing the consequences of elections playing out right now in terms of court appointments, attorneys general, governors, legislatures, city council, county commissions, and all of that could change too.
Absolutely. We would be in a very, very different place if the U.S. Supreme Court looked different. And we would be in a very, very different place in New Mexico if we didn't have the people in their positions that we do right now. And so, yeah, every vote genuinely does matter at this point.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Comstock Act. I did a little bit of Googling, right? And I found that Comstock was a Connecticut sort of Puritan who was convinced that sex should only be for procreation, even within marriage, and went around the country kind of with a suitcase full of things. Let's just say that you'd be embarrassed if the TSA pulled them out of your suitcase, right? Birth control, but also other things, and went around freaking out all-male legislatures at the time and persuaded an all-male Congress to pass laws banning things that were obscene, right? But our lives are filled with things that are obscene now. So how can this still regulate abortion of all things?
I mean, I would definitely argue it can't, and they would differ. So it's a law that had been essentially invalidated even pre-Roe, but
because we had laws, we had court cases protecting the right to birth control before that, and step by step, we had obscenity cases and things like that.
Correct. Yeah, there were a number of things other than abortion-related cases that have chipped away at that, and so yeah.
So it's sort of a loophole that has opened back up, a portal in time, taking us back to the 1870s.
That's what they would argue, and we will see. We'll see if the U.S. Supreme Court has the appetite to do this that they hope it does. It would not be. It would be disingenuous. It shouldn't. The U.S. Justice Department wrote a memo on why the Comstock Act shouldn't apply in modern day. I think their reading of the law is accurate, but we will see. This is the struggle at this point, is if what we have is an activist U.S. Supreme Court, then they will use whatever tool is put in front of them to strip our ability to enjoy reproductive rights and many other rights that we rely upon. And they've definitely indicated that, for example, interracial marriage may be on the chopping block. There's all sorts of things, and so if this law could give them that potential, we'll be able to better assess the court dependent on these sorts of decisions.
But thinking about what Comstock was talking about preserving the sanctity of marriage, say, about preserving the family, about keeping sex for a very religiously tied purpose, what does that mean this argument is about now? Is this about sex before marriage? Is this about gender roles? Is this about a certain drug that should or should not be authorized? Help me think this through. What does this mean to you? What is this about?
All of that. It's about all of that. And for some people, the question is very, very simple and more kind of the goodness of John Brown, abolitionist-like. For some people, it's really, they just have a moral opposition to this. And I think for many others, it does get into the more like misogynistic kind of question of they wish you and I were not sitting here able to talk about this right now. And one manner of so doing or furthering that would be to make sure, it's a little bit late for me, but to make sure that I have 7 children to busy myself with. And so I think it is all of those things. And I think they would, but there are people who would like to take you and I back to the 1800s and to not hear what we have to say about it.
But the arguments that we're hearing in courts now, I mean, you mentioned people who have a strong moral feeling about this. And there's definitely a philosophical debate that you can imagine having with someone you love and care about who believes differently from you on this, who just believes it's absolutely wrong to have an abortion. But that doesn't seem to be the debate that any of these lawsuits or ordinances are about, is it?
No, it is not.
I mean, legally, it's nowhere near that. They're not even this is just not a topic of conversation, is it?
It isn't, which I think is telling.